Welcome to Xini Pulse.
Welcome to The Explainer. All right, today we're jumping into one of the most talked about and, honestly, one of the most potent ideas from Robert Greene's famous book, The 48 Laws of Power.
That's a pretty heavy quote, right? Keep people off balance and in the dark. That's the core of what we're talking about today. Law number 3, conceal your intents. It's a principle built entirely on the power of mystery, and it's designed to give you a strategic advantage in, well, basically any human interaction.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at what the strategy actually is. Then, we're going to dig into the hidden costs, because, believe me, there are costs. And finally, we'll get into the really wild part, the science behind why we might actually be hardwired to deceive in the first place. It's kinda unsettling, to be honest.
All right, so Law 3, the power of mystery. But what does that really mean? At its absolute core, it's about turning unpredictability into a weapon. So the goal is super simple, right? You want to create this aura of unpredictability. The idea is to keep everyone guessing, your rivals, even your friends. Because when you control what people know, you basically control their reality. And in the game of power, let's be real, that control is everything.
See, when people have no idea what you're going to do next, their own minds do the work for you. Their fears, their insecurities, they start to fill in the blanks. And what happens? They end up reacting to shadows, not to your actual plan. While they're busy chasing ghosts and defending against things that aren't even real, you're free to move forward with what you really wanted to do all along.
Okay, so that's the theory, but how do you actually do it? Let's get into the playbook. Robert Greene lays out some pretty specific tactics for mastering this whole concealment thing. Now, this is where it gets really clever. The main tool here is something Greene calls the smokescreen. It's basically a distraction, but here's the kicker. The best smokescreens aren't some big, elaborate lie. Nope. They're actually kind of boring. They're familiar, they're bland, they might even seem noble. The real masters hide their moves behind something that just doesn't attract any attention at all. And Greene gives us 3 classic examples of these smokescreens. First, you've got the poker face. Just a simple, unreadable expression. No one knows what you're thinking. Second, there's the noble gesture. You know, doing something that seems kind or supportive. It completely disarms people. And third, my favorite, the seductive pattern. You do the same thing over and over, lulling your target to sleep, and then bam, you do the complete opposite. And if you want a perfect real-world example of this, just look at Haile Selassie back in 1927. He was dealing with this defiant warlord, Balcha, who rolls up with 10,000 men. Now, Balcha wasn't dumb. He suspected a trap from the get-go. So when Selassie invites him to a big feast, he brings along 600 of his best guards, all armed to the teeth. But here's the genius part. The banquet was the smokescreen. While Selassie was inside playing the charming host, his agents were outside bribing Balcha's army, who were just sitting around without their leader. They literally bought all their weapons. So Balcha walks out of this party, full and happy, only to find himself completely weaponless and surrounded. Checkmate. He was defeated without a single shot ever being fired. Incredible. I mean, that story is a total masterstroke, right? A flawless victory. But, and this is a big but, there's a huge hidden cost to all this. Playing this game, wielding this law, it comes with a really steep price. Think about it. Every single lie, every hidden agenda, every mask you put on, it all needs constant maintenance. It adds to what psychologists call your cognitive load. All that energy you're spending just keeping your story straight, that's energy you're not putting into building something real, or creating, or actually leading. And it's not a one-time payment. It's like a tax on your mind that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And this is where we have to draw a really important line. There's a huge difference between strategic silence, which is just wisdom, right? Knowing when to keep your mouth shut, and active deception, which is just, well, it's manipulation. One preserves who you are. The other, it chews away at your character, destroys trust, and frankly, it is mentally exhausting. So here's a little test for you, a way to measure your own concealment load. Just ask yourself this. If everything you said this past week suddenly became public, would you have to do a bunch of explaining or apologizing? Seriously, think about that. The distance between your gut reaction and a simple, easy no, well, that gap shows you just how heavy that mask really is. Okay, so if this is all so exhausting and costly, why do we do it? I mean, why is deception such a fundamental part of being human? Well, this is where things get really fascinating, because evolutionary psychology has a theory.
and it's a little bit disturbing.
The basic idea is this. We might have evolved the ability to deceive ourselves for one big reason: to get better at deceiving other people. Let that sink in. Self-deception isn't some bug in our programming. It's a feature. It's an evolutionary hack to make us more convincing liars.
And it kind of makes sense when you think about it, right? If you actually believe your own lie, you're not going to have those little tells, the sweaty palms, the shifty eyes. Plus, it gets rid of that heavy cognitive load we were just talking about. There's no need to keep your story straight if you think it's the truth. And on top of all that, it gets rid of the guilt. It makes the whole thing sustainable.
So, where does that leave us? On the one hand, we have the raw strategic power of concealment, and on the other, this incredibly high personal cost of deception. Let's try and tie all this together for the final takeaway. And here's the big idea, the thing to really chew on. Law 3 isn't just some Machiavellian tactic you use on other people. It's something that's going on inside of us. That drive to hide our intentions is very real, but because doing it consciously is so draining, our brains might have come up with the perfect workaround. We just deceive ourselves first.
And all of this really leads us to one final huge question. In this whole game of power, where do you draw the line? Where does a winning strategy end and a trap you've set for your own self begin? Because the real danger here, when you get too good at concealment, is that you might just end up fooling the most important person of all, yourself.
Control your mind, or it controls you.